By 555 AD, the Roman Empire still endured, but it was no longer united. The western provinces had long fallen, yet in the east, Byzantium thrived. From the fertile lands of Egypt to the mountains of Asia Minor, from the islands of the Aegean to the shores of the Mediterranean, the empire had reached its zenith. At the heart of this empire stood Constantinople, a city of stone and fire, where massive walls had never fallen, and the Golden Horn brimmed with ships from across the known world. Here merchants sold silk from the east, spices from India, and grain from Egypt. Horses and carts crowded the bustling streets, while the aroma of fresh bread and spices filled the air. Constantinople was not just a city. It was the beating heart of an empire. It all began to change with the death of Justinian in 565 AD. The empire that had once stretched from Spain to North Africa began to shrink. Italy was lost to the Lombards, Spain returned to the Visigoths, and the deserts of North Africa slipped beyond Byzantine control. Byzantium's focus narrowed, its strength concentrated on the eastern provinces and the Balkans, with Constantinople standing firm, the unyielding heart of the empire. But it was not only the borders that changed. Inside Constantinople, the empire grew more complex. Power was no longer wielded by armies alone. It flowed through the intricate web of court politics, noble families, and ambitious generals. Every decision could shift the balance between loyalty and betrayal, and every emperor navigated a delicate path between ambition and duty. And with politics came religion. Faith was woven into every law, every decision, every debate. Controversies over sacred icons and divine authority stirred unrest across the city. Bishops, monks, and court officials clashed in the halls of power, while the Hagia Sophia rose as a symbol of both imperial might and spiritual devotion. From the east, Arab caliphates advanced relentlessly, capturing lands once under Byzantine rule. From the north and northwest, Slavic tribes, Bulgars, and later Seljuk Turks pressed into the Balkans and Anatolia. Each invasion strained the armies, tested the city's defences, and drained the treasury. In 1095, despite the lingering divisions of the Great Schism, Emperor Alexios I Komnenos turned to the west. He sent envoys to Pope Urban II, asking for military aid to defend the empire and reclaim lost lands from the Seljuk Turks. Western knights and nobles answered the call, crossing seas to fight alongside Byzantium. At first, their arrival brought relief. Armies reinforced Byzantine positions, supply lines were secured, and the eastern provinces were stabilized. But the alliance was fragile. Cultural differences, rival ambitions, and the divided loyalties of the Western armies, pledged more to the Pope than to the Emperor, sowed tension. By 1204, these tensions erupted. The Fourth Crusade, originally destined for the Holy Land, turned its forces against Constantinople itself. The city was besieged, its walls breached, and for 3 days, Crusaders looted palaces, churches, and treasures. The Byzantines were driven from their own capital, and Latin nobles established a new state, the Latin Empire, on the ruins of Constantinople. Though the Byzantine emperors fled to Nicaea in exile, plotting their return, the empire had been scarred forever. Constantinople remained, magnificent in stone and memory, but the betrayal of 1204 marked a turning point from which Byzantium would never fully recover. For over half a century, Constantinople lay under Latin rule. The palaces had been looted, the markets disrupted, and the people of the city were subjects of a foreign power. The Byzantine emperors, exiled in Nicaea, never gave up hope. From their temporary capital, they plotted, rebuilt armies and nurtured alliances to reclaim the heart of their empire. Michael VIII Palaiologos, a determined and cunning leader, prepared the city's reconquest. In 1261, with stealth and strategy rather than a massive battle, his forces slipped past the Latin defenders. The citizens of Constantinople opened the gates to the returning Byzantines, and for the first time in decades, the city was back under imperial control. Palaces, churches, and fortifications bore the scars of the Latin occupation, but the city's soul endured. The reconquest restored Constantinople to Byzantium, yet the empire was a shadow of its former self. Its territories were smaller, its armies weaker, and its treasury strained. Though the city again thrived as a cultural and religious centre, the lessons of 1204 remained. Even the greatest fortress could be breached, and even allies could turn into enemies. Though Constantinople had been reclaimed, the empire that rose from exile was fragile. To the east, a new menace gathered strength: the Ottoman Turks, fierce, united and relentless. One by one, Byzantine fortresses in Anatolia fell, towns were abandoned, and the empire's borders shrank further into the shadow of the approaching tide. The people of Constantinople clung to the familiar rhythms of city life. Markets bustled, ships sailed the Golden Horn, and the Hagia Sophia still shone in the sunlight. But every lost fortress, every failed caravan, every distant battle reminded them the glory of Byzantium could not protect them from what was coming. The horizon darkened, and the empire's days of unchallenged power seemed numbered. Inside the city, the court wrestled with politics, intrigue, and dwindling resources, while the threat outside grew ever greater. Byzantium had survived centuries of invasions, betrayals, and religious strife. Yet the storm on the eastern horizon would test its endurance like never before. For centuries, Constantinople had withstood every storm. Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, Crusaders. Many had tried to break its walls. Some had failed in fire and humiliation. The city endured. Even the Ottomans had once been repelled. In 1422, their siege collapsed and the ancient walls stood firm once more. But this time would be different. Sultan Mehmed II did not see the city as merely a conquest. To him, it was destiny. He gathered vast armies, sealed the Bosporus with fortresses, and commissioned a weapon unlike any the world had seen. The great cannon of Orban thundered against the Theodosian Walls, shaking stone that had stood for 1,000 years. Day after day, the bombardment continued. Smoke filled the air, rubble choked the streets, and the defenders fought without rest. Greeks and foreigners stood side by side. Among them were the Genoese under Giovanni Giustiniani, hardened soldiers who reinforced the weakest sections of the walls. The battle was fierce, relentless assaults, hand-to-hand combat atop shattered ramparts, blood staining the ancient stones. On the eve of the final assault, Emperor Constantine XI entered the Hagia Sophia. There, beneath its vast dome, clergy and citizens gathered in prayer, Greeks and Latins together, united at last in the face of annihilation. Before dawn, on May 29th, 1453, the final attack began. Waves of Ottoman soldiers crashed against the breaches. When Giustiniani was wounded and carried from the walls, morale faltered. The defences broke. Constantine XI cast aside his imperial insignia and fought as a soldier among soldiers. He was never seen again. The battle had been fierce. The resistance had been real, but the dream of Mehmed was fulfilled. Constantinople fell, and with it ended the Byzantine Empire. Empires rise, empires fall, but some leave echoes that never fade. In the silence after the cannons, in the stones of forgotten walls, in the dome of the Hagia Sophia that still touches the sky, Byzantium endures, not as a realm of power, but as a memory of resilience, faith, and destiny. If you found this journey through history meaningful, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to continue exploring the rise and fall of the world's greatest empires.